7 wives, 19 daughters, not a single son. And on the night his family needed saving most, it wasn't the child he prayed for who came to rescue him. It was the ones he almost stopped counting. Dearest gentle viewer, if you love stories packed with mystery and suspense, hit that subscribe button right now. Make una no miss our sweet, sweet story and stay till the end. This one has more twists than you're expecting. In the village of Adumasi, there lived a wealthy farmer named Baba Osei. He owned the largest farmland in the region, herds of cattle, and a compound so big it took 10 minutes to walk from one end to the other. But Baba Osei carried a heavy shame no amount of wealth could hide. After his first wife gave him 3 daughters and no son, the village began to whisper that his bloodline would end with him. A man without a son, the elders reminded him constantly, is a man whose name dies when he does. Desperate, Baba Osei married a second wife, hoping for different luck. She gave him 2 daughters. He married a third. 4 more daughters followed. By the time he had married his 7th wife, Baba Osei had 19 daughters filling his compound, running between huts, laughing, arguing, growing into clever young women, and still not one son. The compound grew heavy with tension no wealth could soften. Each wife believed she alone should have given him his son, and each blamed the others quietly for the family's misfortune. The wives competed constantly, whispering that another wife's cooking must be cursed, that another's family carried bad blood, that another had visited a witch doctor to sabotage the rest. His 3rd wife, Ajua, grew especially bitter. Her 2 daughters were the smartest in the compound, quick with numbers, sharp with words, but she watched Baba Osei's eyes grow duller and duller every time another daughter was born instead of a son. She began secretly visiting a traveling herbalist from a distant village, paying heavily for charms she hoped would finally bend her womb toward a boy. Meanwhile, his eldest daughter from his first wife, a clever and quiet girl named Abena, watched everything happening around her with growing unease. She noticed her father speaking less and less to his daughters, spending his evenings alone staring at his farmland, calculating who would inherit it when he died. She noticed the wives growing colder toward each other, exchanging polite smiles in public and sharp words in private. She sensed something was building beneath the surface of the compound, something that would eventually break. That break came the night Ajua gave birth to her 3rd pregnancy. The whole compound held its breath as the midwife walked through the night. When the cry finally came, Baba Osei rushed into the birthing hut himself, and the midwife, exhausted but smiling, placed the newborn into his shaking arms. A son. After 19 daughters, finally a son. The celebration that followed lasted 3 full days. Drummers arrived from neighboring villages. Baba Osei slaughtered 2 of his best cattle for the feast. Ajua, exhausted but glowing with pride, was suddenly treated like the most important woman in the compound, while the other 6 wives watched with tight, forced smiles, hiding years of quiet resentment now boiling over completely. But within the same week, whispers began circulating through the compound that something was wrong. The baby, whom Baba Osei named Kwame, cried constantly, refused to feed properly, and grew weaker instead of stronger. The village healer was summoned repeatedly, but each visit left him more confused than the last. Ajua, terrified of losing the only thing that had finally given her status in the compound, refused to let anyone examine the child too closely. She grew increasingly secretive, feeding Kwame alone behind closed doors, refusing even the other wives' offers to help. This only deepened the suspicion already spreading through the household. It was Abena, quietly observant as always, who first noticed something deeply unsettling. Watching from a distance one evening, she saw Ajua administering something to baby Kwame from a small clay bottle, not breast milk, but a dark, strange liquid that smelled sharply of herbs Abena did not recognize. Frightened but unsure what she'd truly seen, Abena said nothing at first, uncertain whether to trust her own eyes. But over the following days, Kwame's condition worsened dramatically, his body growing feverish, his cries weakening into faint whimpers that terrified the entire compound. Baba Osei, watching his only son fade before his eyes, fell into complete despair, blaming himself, blaming fate, blaming the ancestors for cursing him after finally granting his wish. The other wives, sensing the shift in power crumbling, began to circle with their own accusations. Some quietly suggested Ajua had used dark medicine to force a male birth and was now paying the price the ancestors demanded. Finally, unable to stay silent any longer, Abena approached her father directly, describing exactly what she had witnessed: the clay bottle, the strange dark liquid, Ajua's desperate secrecy. Baba Osei, furious and terrified, confronted Ajua immediately. Cornered and weeping, she finally confessed the truth. Desperate to guarantee a healthy son after years of pressure and humiliation, she had paid the traveling herbalist not only for charms to conceive a boy, but for a strange tonic meant to make the infant stronger after birth, a tonic she had continued giving him daily without understanding it was slowly poisoning him instead of strengthening him. The village healer, informed immediately, walked through the night to reverse what he could, using every antidote he knew. Baba Osei sat outside the hut until dawn, praying to ancestors he had spent years blaming, now begging them for a second chance at a mercy he wasn't sure he deserved. By sunrise, Kwame's fever finally broke. He would live, though weakened for months to come, requiring constant care that Ajua, humiliated and remorseful, was in no position to provide alone while the whole village judged her harshly. It was unexpectedly Baba Osei's daughters who stepped forward. Abena organized her younger sisters into careful shifts, ensuring Kwame was fed properly, kept warm, and watched constantly through his recovery. The very daughters Baba Osei once seen as disappointments were the ones who nursed his only son back to health, working together with a devotion none of the feuding wives had managed to offer each other in years. Watching his daughters care for their baby brother with such quiet strength, something shifted permanently in Baba Osei. He realized, with a shame that finally cut deeper than any village whisper ever had, that he had spent 19 chances chasing the one child he believed would carry his name, while overlooking 19 children who had already been carrying his household on their shoulders the entire time. Kwame recovered fully within a year, his health finally stable, his early illness eventually forgotten by all but the family who lived through it. Baba Osei, changed by everything that had happened, began involving his daughters directly in managing the farmland and the family's growing wealth, something unheard of in Adumasi at the time. Abena, in particular, proved sharper with the farm's accounts than any son could have been, eventually managing the family's entire trading business by the time she reached adulthood. The compound, once fractured by years of competition and resentment, slowly began healing as well. The wives, humbled by how close they had come to losing everything over jealousy, began working together rather than against each other, raising all 20 children, 19 daughters and one son, as one family rather than 7 rival households under a single roof. Years later, when Baba Osei grew old and villagers asked who would inherit his name and his land, he surprised the entire community by naming Abena, not Kwame, as the one who would oversee everything, insisting that inheritance should belong to whoever had proven themselves capable, regardless of whether they were born a son or a daughter. I spent 19 daughters searching for a name to carry my legacy. I nearly lost my only son to my own foolishness before I finally understood. My legacy was never waiting to be born. It had been standing beside me the entire time. If this story touched your heart, do not scroll past without hitting that subscribe button and turning on your notifications. We drop a brand new African folktale every single week, and trust me, you do not want to miss what's coming next.